Folks, happy Friday and welcome to the Freedom from the Press podcast. My name is Jason Roberts and I'm here with my partner in crime.
Good morning, everybody. Todd Peterson. Good to have you with us today as we talk about some explosive allegations out of the Kari Lake camp and then some breaking current events, too. We got to keep everyone up to speed on what's going on in Texas a little bit, Jason.
Yeah, I got to say, folks, Todd and I have been talking on this podcast that as we get into 2024, whatever expectations you have for how crazy things can be, it's going to be crazier than that. And I think so far it hasn't disappointed. I've been keeping a list of all the wild stuff going on, and it's just bizarre. And I got to tell you, today's episode is going to be one of those that you're going to watch and you're going to go back and listen and be like, geez, politics and the media is really as corrupt as we thought. It's even worse than we thought. And that's why we do podcasts like this, right, Todd?
This is why we do it. We are learning ourselves and hoping to share that information with you all. Bottom line, you cannot trust the media. You certainly can't trust your politicians. And as we're going to dive into this Kari Lake story, as we said, it's just the tip of the iceberg. Just assume they're all bought and paid for almost.
Absolutely. And before we get going, folks, we're going to ask you to do us a favor. Give us a like, give us a comment, give us a share. Big tech algorithms, they don't like independent content creators. They don't like they don't like some of the topics we talk about when we expose the media or we talk about government corruption. So they don't push it to many people. And it's funny, like we're streaming on a couple Facebook pages with 1 million people on the page, and the algorithm will send it out to like 100 people or 200 people. So it's really crazy as you see it. But Todd, before we get going into the Kari Lake thing, we got to talk about Texas, right?
Got to talk about Texas. Folks, this is the biggest story right now so far of the year. Jason, depending on how this shakes out, this could be one of the biggest stories of not just the year now, but decade moving forward, because there's a lot of implications here, a lot of ramifications, depending on how this plays out.
Yeah, and to bring everybody up to speed on what's happening in Texas. So Governor Abbott passed a law that said Texas isn't going to allow illegal immigrants in Texas. Texas started putting up barbed wire, razor wire on the border. The Biden administration, every time Texas does something to guarantee its sovereignty, they take legal actions. And right now, they're the big conflict, and there's been about 20 of them, but the Texas put up razor wire. And then it was reported that migrants were trying to cross not at the port of entry. They drowned. And so then everybody was trying to demonize Governor Abbott that, oh, see, they put up this razor wire and caused people to drown. And then where the conflict came in is that the feds came to help rescue the people from the river. They shouldn't have been in the river in the first place. And they couldn't get there because of the razor wire. So then they were going to cut the razor wire, and Texas said, no, you can't cut our razor wire. And there was a big brouhaha on that. It gets rolled to district court, where the Biden administration sues to allow feds to remove the razor wire. And it went to district court. District court said, yep, we're going to uphold that ban. But then it went to the Supreme Court. And then this week, the Supreme Court kicked back and said, no, we didn't make a ruling. They gave no opinion. They just said they're going to reverse the injunction. So that means the feds got access to the razor wire. Todd, did I kind of give an accurate snapshot of where
things are at? Off the top of your head, Jason, that was fantastic here. In short, the federal government, the Biden administration right now, folks, doesn't want to defend your sovereignty, defend your nation. And Texas says if the federal government's not going to uphold the Constitution, which says the federal government has a mandate to provide protection and security from invasion, then Texas is going to honor the 10th Amendment right and say, then we're doing it ourselves.
Yeah, and it's funny when the Supreme Court rejected it, or rejected them banning the feds from removing the razor wire. I'm like, here we go again. More Republicans cave. And I mean, we've talked about it on this podcast. The establishment Republicans are just gonna roll over and play dead. But Governor Abbott did something shocking. He sent a letter to the Biden administration outlining the constitutional arguments that the federal government. So So for those who don't understand, all these states were sovereign entities, and they entered into a pact with the United States of America, and that said, like, hey, you're going to protect our nationwide borders from invasion. And Governor Abbott said, you're not living up to your terms. This language is remarkably similar to back in the 1800s when states started discussing the legal ramification of the Constitution with the federal government. And then,
Yeah, Jason, this is a huge reminder. Folks, we do not live in a democracy. We live in a constitutional republic, and there are 50 individual republics in the nation. Texas and all the other states agreed to join, like Jason said, the union and have this overarching federal government provide certain securities, protections, have certain roles and functions that each of the individual states didn't need to do or couldn't do as well. But with the Biden administration shirking its responsibility, its constitutional duties, Texas is going to pick up the mantle then and do what it needs to do.
Yeah. And so I was shocked. Todd and I were chatting and we're like, holy cow, Abbott said, let's keep we're not going to listen. Anthony, thanks for listening. We're with you. Way to go, Governor Abbott. And then all of a sudden, they say it only takes one person of courage to stand up. And, you see the memes, guys like Todd and I, we come out here every week speaking out against the regime. And that takes courage because they're going to come after you. And as soon as Governor Abbott stood up, I'm like, well, this is different. And then all of a sudden, you had like Governor DeSantis, Kristi Noem, Sarah Huckabee Sanders coming out saying, we're going to stand with Texas. We're going to send our National Guard to Texas. And all of a sudden, this caught on fire the last couple days. And it was insane. And all of a sudden, if you look at all these red states on this map, 25 states governors have come out, have promised Texas support, National Guard, voiced their support of what Texas is doing, demanding the Biden administration takes action. Todd, when you saw all these governors weighing in on this, did you just go, what the heck?
I mean, for once they're actually taking a stand, Jason. And what really caught my eye, you said 25. I was doing some counting as well. This is where we're at. The reality is we are a country split down the middle, Jason. 25 states right now supporting Abbott, 25 states not. You look at any popular election nationwide, it's usually like 52-48, 51-49. Like, this is just the latest example of where Americans are just cut right down the middle. We are living in one nation, but we are really two nations.
Right. And I got to give a shout out to my wife because she came home. So my wife has just like quit following the news because it's so wild. And she's like, this just drives me crazy. And you're in it all day long. So when she gets home, we just kind of unplug and watch something stupid and whatever. And we came home like, hon, I got to tell you about this. And I explained it to her. And I took her through the whole story. She's like, oh, so Supreme Court ruled, but they didn't give an opinion. So Abbott caved. I'm like, no, he stood up. She's like, kidding me. And I'm like, then all of a sudden, all these other states stood up. Then I showed her the map. And she looks at me and she goes, well, we were talking about moving. I guess this is a good template of what states we can move
right?
to.
You have 25 choices to move to.
Yeah, because Todd and I, we're both from Minnesota, which welcome to Communist Central. Minnesota is competing with California for the craziest state in the union. Yeah. But yeah, I'm like, that was a spectacular response from the wife.
And Jason, can I be a cynic for a second? I hate to rain on this parade a little bit. I'm glad that it's happening now. I wonder where this has been for the last couple of years. It is not breaking news that our borders are unguarded and unprotected. It's not breaking news that we've had massive violations and entries of people that we don't know about. And frankly, it doesn't matter who they are or what they are. They just shouldn't be here. Terrorist or not, you might be a great person, but I'm sorry, get in line. Our country can't absorb all 8 billion people around the world. Is it because it's 2024 and an election year that this gins up a little excitement for the base? I mean, that's me being really cynical. I'm glad it's happening. I wish it would have happened sooner, though.
Yeah, Todd and I both think the government is hugely corrupt. And I mean, raise your hand in the chat if you think our government is corrupt, because this is going to be the Kari Lake story that you might have heard a little bit about. It shows media, political corruption, the whole thing. And yeah, I always wonder when stuff like this happens too, is, what's the real plan? what's going on? It's insane. And oh my God, I gotta say the chat box is just spiked today.
Thank you everyone for the following along today. Love the comments.
Yeah. Benton, we the citizens of Texas along the border in need of a portal allowing them to connect and share their needs in regards to protecting their land with those volunteers willing to come to their aid.
Yeah.
You know what's interesting? Governor Abbott actually is providing local residents with their own razor wire, which I'm like, wow. Now, here's why we bring this up, because we've been talking, we did a whole episode on the border. The root cause, just to summarize, is that Joe Biden, day one, he did away with a bunch of Trump executive orders. He instituted his own executive orders. And ultimately, what the problem is anybody can show up at the border with no ID and say, I'm seeking political asylum. Political asylum was defined as people who were being hunted and killed in their home world or their home country, not people that were broke. And now they've extended this to economic migrants, saying that they're refugees. And while they come into the country, which their court date takes 3, 5, 8 years, then they can just come in and, oh, by the way, we're going to give them public assistance. We're going to count them for the census, all that stuff. And those are just interpretations of the law from the Biden administration. So if he just enforced the existing laws on the books and said, yeah, no, you can't come into America until your claim is processed, you need to follow the legal pathways to whatnot. Just because you're an economic migrant doesn't mean you're a refugee. If he just did that, like, the border would be closed tomorrow. And then a trick too the Democrats are playing is they are saying, oh, hey, we want to pass this new legislation, and Republicans are blocking it for political reasons. No, Republicans are blocking it because the Democratic legislation just says, how do we process people faster? It says nothing about not letting them in. It's like, we're cool with a bunch of people coming in, or I think they capped a number. I can't remember what I saw.
5,000 a day. So we're talking millions every year.
Right. Yeah.
But Jason,
So they're talking millions a year. Oh, what's that, Todd?
I was going to say, speaking of legislation here, I think it's important for folks to understand there's one of two explanations. Either the cartel controls the border and then we don't want to admit that, or there's other nefarious political purposes. The GOP, some of the Republican senators introduced legislation that would prohibit illegal immigrants from counting for congressional representation and electoral votes. So, folks, I don't know if you're aware of this, but currently the existing law says that states will count everybody in their population. This is legal and illegal citizens. And so ask yourself, we've had 8 million people come into the country the last couple of years. They are all counting. So if California absorbs them, Illinois absorbs them, they're all counting for congressional representation. And they boost the electoral count when in November you have Biden or whoever it may be, Michelle Obama, we've talked about, and Trump competing for those electoral votes. The Republicans in the Senate, again, you wonder why they didn't do this sooner, but they introduced legislation to say, no. Only legal citizens will count towards that representation. But again, I think that's one of the more insidious explanations for why the border is so open, because Democrats love the idea of importing not only voters, but this representation piece as well.
Yeah, and I've seen different speculation. It's really hard because on the census, President Trump wanted to have you declare your citizenship status, and they were told him that was racist, so he couldn't do it. So there's just all speculation for how many illegals. And Skip is probably right. Skip says goals 50 million illegals has been his dream for years. Fact check.
Yeah.
But anyway, so they're estimating California gets anywhere from 3 to 8 additional members of the House of Representatives and also electoral college votes because of their illegal immigrant population. The other thing too that's bigger than this is you need to, if these folks come in, they get on public assistance, which is more of a Democrat position. They have kids. Those kids are American citizens. 20 years from now, those kids who grew up on government assistance and in a Democrat household many of them will become second generation voters. That's part of why California is as blue as it is, because now when Reagan granted all the amnesty, all those people became just Democrat voters because they were in for the free money. It's ridiculous.
And it happens fast. Do you remember that Reagan carried California in 1984?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. He
Can you
carried it
imagine?
in a
In my
landslide.
lifetime, California voted Republican and carried Republicans.
Right.
So, and now we've had how many more millions come across? So it's a real issue here. Jason, we have some active chatterboxes this morning here, but we have got to get to this Kari Lake story that we promised everyone about, because this blows your mind.
Yeah, just one quick thing. I got to give a shout out to Mabel Collins. What can we, the people, do? Here's the thing, Mabel. It's primary season. Make sure wherever you're at, you support a MAGA candidate. If you're like me in Minnesota and we're lost up here, I am giving donations directly to the campaigns to MAGA candidates. Brandon Gill, we know him in Texas. I've contributed to his campaign. JP Mikowski. I mean, other folks around the country. We not only need to have Republicans win, we need America First Republicans to win, not these rhinos who are letting this happen. But with that said, Todd, let's get to the Kari Lake story, folks. And this is gonna blow your mind because it touches on all of it. Every conspiracy theory you heard about government, every conspiracy theory you heard about the media, this story has it all. So, Todd, do you want to kind of start with some background?
Absolutely. And again, folks, in the back of your mind, that this is all happening, that it's true, but you've never really been able to pin it down anywhere. And again, we're going to preface this by saying these are all allegations right now. They seem fairly convincing, and it certainly comports with what you think happens in politics. But again, allegations right now. But Kari Lake released this bombshell audio. She apparently had a recording of her talking to the GOP chair in Arizona, Jeff DeWitt. More on him in a second. And in this audio recording, she is getting offered multiple times bribes to not run in the 2024 Senate race. They're saying you need to sit out 2 years, let Trump go away, let the MAGA movement die down. In the meantime, what's your number here? What's it going to cost us? What are you willing to accept to not run right now? We'll give you a job, a title. You can sit on the board. And Jason, when I heard you can sit on the board, I immediately thought Nikki Haley, who went over to Boeing's board. Everything you ever thought about politics, and they even reference powerful people back east without naming anybody. But again, we've always figured there was these shadow figures, powerful, rich, beyond our imagination. But all of these conspiracies are ringing true if these allegations are true.
Right. Well, and it's funny for those who don't know. Yeah, listen up, Tammy. We're going to explain to you how they became so damn rich.
Buckle up, Tammy.
Yeah, it's so funny too, because people see this and they just ignore the obvious. And like, we all knew it was true, but we just didn't have the proof, right? So when this story came out, it was it just checked all the boxes. It's almost too perfect in what it does. For those who don't know, to give a little background, Kari Lake was actually grew up Republican, became a Democrat, and she became a big member of the media in the Arizona market. And at some point, she saw how corrupt the media was. This is kind of her story in a nutshell, and how they were spinning false narratives, and how the politicians, both Republican and Democrat, were doing things to ruin the country. And Kari Lake became more conservative. She became more Republican when President Trump came out. That America First MAGA message started resonating with her. She ran for governor in Arizona. She's claiming shenanigans in her election with Katie Hobbs. We have to be careful because we're on some platforms that won't necessarily let us talk about a whole lot of Arizona. But anyways, so she lost Arizona by the thinnest of margins. And now she has announced her run for U.S. Senate. And the Senate seat's up for grabs. I think it's the Cinema seat, if I remember right, Kristen Cinema, but I'd have to look that up. But Senate, there are almost no MAGA senators. So the establishment is terrified of Kari Lake, because the Senate is full of all these clowns like Mitch McConnell, who are on the take and ruin America, and a whole list of others. It's funny, in the House, we've got 5, 10, 20 really good reps, Clay Higgins and Matt Gaetz, and even some guys like Thomas Massey that I think are pretty solid. The Senate is like a ghost town. They are all corporate establishment country club Republicans. And so the thought of a MAGA Republican scares the shit out of them. So we're going to start in spring of 2023. Kari Lake was at CPAC, a conservative conference. And Todd, let's play what Kari Lake said.
Somebody showed up at my door this week. They called me before and said, I got to talk to you in person. This can't be done over the phone, which is always kind of like, uh-oh, what's that going to be about? They came to my door and they tried to bribe me out of getting out of politics. It's really happened. I'm telling you this because this is how disgusting politics is. A mom who runs for office and they're afraid of me, they tried to bribe me with a job title, with a huge salary, a position on a board. This is how they do it. And I said, are you kidding me? I walked away from a big job and a big salary. I'm not motivated by that stuff, guys. I'm not. So this person standing before me was sent at the request of some powerful people back east. They want me out of politics. But wait a minute. I thought they already stopped us. Why are they so afraid? I thought they already stopped our movement. So
all right, and then she gets a lot of much-deserved applause, but wow. So that's the first inkling we had. All these shenanigans were going down.
Yeah, so this gets reported spring 2023. I think it was March or so was CPAC. And then you'd think that would be a pretty big news story. But Todd, how did the mainstream media cover this?
Like you would expect, right? So here you have an America First MAGA candidate, great name recognition. I mean, even though she lost the governor's race, they still said Kari Lake would be a great vice president for Donald Trump. So a lot of people are attracted to her, but the media said, no, you're a kook, you're a conspiracy theorist. This didn't happen. You're lying. This isn't how politics works. Politics is always on the up and up. Those dastardly Republicans. You know exactly how they spun this one.
Right. Yeah. And pull up that graphic for the thing, because this was wild, folks. Because at the time when she came out, organizations like MSN, Kari Lake, she was offered bribe to get out of politics. And then you can see part of it. Kari Lake tells a shocking story at CPAC, made a surprise, unscheduled speech. She told a shocking story that was hard to believe. So back at the time when this came out, I'm like, oh, this is kind of spicy. And you read all these liberal news articles, and all the articles to a T call her like the disgraced former reporter, conspiracy theorist. This story is shocking and hard to believe. Think of that sentence. They said she told a shocking story that was hard to believe. So somebody being offered a bribe in politics is hard to believe. You're a clown show if you think that. What's ironic is when this audio drop, which was just this week from the Daily Caller, which we're going to get to in a sec, all of a sudden you see where it says this page no longer exists. So that day I was going out and I'm like, oh, I got to read these articles that came out when Kari first said that. And I was rereading them. We're going to talk about it on today's podcast. We're going to screenshot clips from them. You click on those links today, the page no longer exists. So all these news media outlets that were saying, oh, Kari Lake's crazy, what is she talking about? They are actively scrubbing them from the internet.
Yeah, not an editor's note, not an update saying, hey, here's the most recent, addition to the story. Just gone. Just memory hold.
Right.
Yeah. And so, it's always amazing. I got to make this point too really fast, and then I'll let you jump back in there. But
no, go for it.
They always hate the messenger. They don't go after. They say it's a shocking story. You're damn right, it's shocking. We're talking about politicians getting bribed, and America First politicians. No. It's not the fact that a bribery takes place. They're mad at Kari Lake for sharing that a bribe potentially took place, right? Like it's always backwards. They never go after the message. They always go after the messenger to make sure that you stay focused and stay angry on Trump or Lake or DeSantis or whoever it may be. Don't get mad about that bribes are happening. Just ignore that part of the story. Just be mad when I say Kari Lake's name or Donald Trump's name.
Well, and think of the language that these liberal media outlets use. Shocking story, surprise speech. And then they use a phrase that was hard to believe. Now, I challenge you, anytime they talk about any Democrat stuff that seems far-fetched, do they say hard to believe? When Jamal Bowman said, "Oh, it was an accident. I pulled the fire alarm." Oh, well, actually, it wasn't an accident. Do they say his story was hard to believe? No. They intentionally use language like this to discredit and disparage their political opponents, which aren't just Republicans. They are people who have an America First agenda. Now, there just so happens to be none of them on the Democrat side right now. So it's mainly Republicans they're going after, or MAGA they're going after. But it's really important to understand this whole language piece and how they frame it. And this is not news media reporting. This is opinion piece. Like Todd and I don't claim to be journalists. We come on the internet and express our opinion. But people think MSN, and there was 100 stories, USA Today, CNN, MSNBC. Everybody used the same stuff. Most articles have been scrubbed, so you can't find it anymore.
Absolutely. Yeah, Jason, I want on that Bowman piece too. There's so much you can go down on this. They accused us of being a racist if we said Bowman's making the story up. So you always have to ask yourself, why is the story getting framed this way? We're freedom from the press, folks. We're trying to break you out of the matrix and that matrix mindset. If Kari Lake's thing is shocking, it's unscheduled, it's hard to believe. And then if you I'll use your example of Bowman pulling the fire alarm. You're a racist if you don't believe it. He didn't do it. He did do it. He did it for good reasons. They always change their narrative slightly, but always ask yourself, why are they framing it up this way? And then you'll certainly see a pattern. And our folks, we have a smart audience, Jason. They see those patterns too right now. It's always one-sided. When Kari Lake, an America First candidate, has something to say, she's the kook. The story itself, ignore it.
Yeah. And I mean, even to use something going on today, President Trump is in court with the Jean E. Carroll defamation suit. And if you read the court documents and all the weird stuff in Jean E. Carroll's thing, and they're all available online. You can go get the court transcripts. Don't trust what the media tells you, but you read a media article about it. They don't say she has these hard to believe allegations, or these stories are a little crazy, or this is a wow. They're like, they take it as gospel. And yep, she said it must be true, and she is above reproach. Whereas Kari Lake, no, she's a kook. She's a kook. This is a hard to believe story. So then the Daily Caller drops an article this week. We actually covered it and shared the audio on the AmericanTribune.com earlier this week. If you haven't, check out our website, the AmericanTribune.com. That's where we do kind of our news and kind of breaking news. Then we also have the AmericanTribune.news, which is where we go into our deeper dives, and we can say things on there that you can't necessarily say on your regular website. It's a subscription page, and it's pretty cool. But the audio release, turns out it was a conversation that was recorded between Kari Lake and Jeff DeWitt at some restaurant. He invited her out, just like she said, to say, hey, do you want to grab some lunch? Jeff DeWitt is the Arizona GOP chairperson. He is no longer. He resigned yesterday. Trump 2016 CEO and COO, Trump 2020, former NASA state treasurer. So he's a longtime political guy, and he's deep in the swamp. He's the dude that called up Kari Lake, we're assuming, if the audio is correct, and said, hey, let's grab lunch or whatnot and talk. Kari Lake, or somebody, they haven't announced who, recorded the conversation. For those wondering, Arizona is a single party consent state, which means you can record the conversation. And it's funny because even today when I'm reading the media report on it, they're like, well, if you're going to have a conversation with Kari Lake, make sure that you make sure you're not being recorded. I got to say, if some political person says, hey, I need to talk to you about something, let's meet in person, like, there's a good chance I'm recording that conversation, and there's a good chance too I'm having a food taster with me, because I don't want to get Clinton. But that's Jeff DeWitt. Todd, any other insights on Jeff DeWitt?
I mean, I'm seeing former CFO at NASA. I haven't done any homework on the guy, but I'm like, is that the NASA? But then I think if it is, that's government. And then he's state treasurer of Arizona. I mean, this is a connected politician, and we'll play the audio clip too, but he references the fact that he's kind of in it as well. So here's a guy, again, you can see the Trump 2016, 2020, long-time connections in politics. And so he tries to portray himself as like, Kari, I hate to be, the bearer of bad news. Here's this deal. Like, super shady guy comes across, but he did resign. He contested. He didn't contest the message. He does contest in his resignation the fact that there might be some manipulation of the evidence. So take that for what you will here. But Jason, should we get into the first clip?
We should. Hang on one sec, though. I gotta give a shout out to Jerome and a clarification. Jerome, thanks for tuning in. Thanks for chatting. Mabel Collins, vote Republican. I'm going to take it a step further, Jerome. Vote MAGA, not Republican, because Republican candidates, guys like this, are the Republican establishment.
Jeff DeWitt is Republican. I don't want to vote for Jeff DeWitt anymore.
Right. Yeah, no, Jeff DeWitt and his ilk are trash.
No.
Mitch McConnell, Kevin McCarthy, like, go down the list. But let's get into the audio.
A number at which
I can be bought.
not be bought.
That's what it's about.
You can take a pause for a couple of years.
No.
And then go right back to what you're doing.
No. 10 million, 20 million, 30, no. A billion, no. This is not about money. This is about our country. I think it's disturbing that that anybody would think this is.
No, to be fair, even me.
Okay, so that's kind of the teaser for you all. We have a couple clips of this conversation. You can find it in full on our website, on Twitter. I mean, this is making the rounds everywhere here. We just wanted to kind of introduce you to it, break it down a little bit. But Kari Lake, just like she said in CPAC, reiterates that right away at the clip. I cannot be bought. But that's not going to stop our man DeWitt. He's going to keep pressing for another full 10 minutes.
Kitty up.
I'm not going to let these people who hate our country tell me not to run. You should call them and tell them to get behind me. So what's going on? I'm assuming this is our friend.
This is back east. There are very powerful people that want to keep you out.
I know they do.
But they're willing to put their money where their mouth is in a big way. So, this conversation never happened.
This is crazy.
I got to talk on this for a sec. So this is the head of the GOP in Arizona that said, okay, and Alice is asking, every statement they pick on word here, word there, show the whole clip. Oh yeah, the whole clip's on our website, Alice. TheAmericanTribune.com. We have the full 10-minute audio on there. So we're just picking out that because we didn't think people wanted to sit through the whole 10 minutes. But if you'd like to, go on our website. We've got the whole clip on there. But if you look on here, he clearly says there are very powerful people back east, assuming DC, something like that. They want you out. Why would you want Kari Lake out? Arizonans love her. She barely lost the Arizona governor race, if you believe the results. And if you don't believe the results, like, she is a hugely powerful candidate. And he even clarifies on here that there's like no limit to what they're willing to do. Yeah. Todd, does that not confirm, like,
this confirms everything. Like I said at the onset, in the back of your mind that this absolutely happens, but it's still bonkers to actually, again, allegations, but to get more concrete evidence of that. Like, this is what those conversations sound like. And to me, Jason, of all the clips we have for our folks today, this one came across as the most sinister to me. Like, the tone of them talking, like, there's powerful people back east. Oh, they want you out. I know they do. Like, Lake is no dummy. Lake knows exactly what's going on here. She knows who these folks are. I don't think they're ever going to tell us who they are, which kind of speaks to maybe, if I would love to find out who are these powerful folks back east, but I don't think we're ever going to get that information because there's this looming fear still of like, I can't get too far out of line or else. And I just keep, that ... at the end of there.
Right. Yeah.
And I do want to just comment on Alice. Thanks for following along, Alice. Love your comment. Thanks for putting that down in the comment box there. But we selectively edited because we didn't want to spend 10 minutes. But I'm going to be honest. Go listen to yourself to come to your own conclusions. But it's not as if we found half of the audio that confirmed what we're trying to say, and the other half was where there's no bribes taking place. And so it's really just a one-sided audio from start to finish.
Absolutely.
But love you following along and new to the sessions. Yeah, thanks for joining us, Alice. Let's get on to clip number 3.
Yeah, giddy up.
They don't own me. And it pisses me off.
Yeah, I don't know it's about ownership.
It's about control.
I don't know it's about control. It's about being on the team. I guess that's, you know what I mean?
They want to be on the team.
They want you to be on their team.
But
Just team. You know?
But if they're pushing a globalist agenda, I can't do that. So what do they want? What do they want me to do?
They want you to stay out for 2 years.
Now, why would they want her to stay out for 2 years? Oh, wait, there is a presidential election. Hey, we got to give a shout out to Split Rock Coffee tuning in today. Ron and Paul, we're both drinking our Split Rock coffee out of our mug. Disabled veteran owned coffee company in our local Minnesota. Go to splitrockcoffee.com. Hey, Todd, do they have a promo code where they can save any money?
Absolutely, folks. Splitrockcoffee.com. Use promo code TODD10. You can save an immediate 10% on your order. You can support a great cause. And Jason, I will just add too, if you like the mugs that we have, I don't think we have the hats up, the American Tribune store.com, just up and running there. You can pick up these great mugs for the American Tribune and a ton of other Trump merch. We're dropping new stuff all the time, so be sure to check that out too. You can use promo code TAT10 for that and save an instant 10%.
Absolutely. But back to the clip here. So notice how he says on our team. Well, Kari Lake's a Republican. She's going to get to the House and vote for many Republican things. They want her to sit out for 2 years because, if you're adding these up, they know she's going to have an American First MAGA agenda. They know she is going to be campaigning for President Trump. They know they don't want people in the Senate that are America First. And here's the other thing they know. If you think back to 2016, 2017, 2018, it's coming out that many of the Republicans knew all the Russia stuff was hot garbage. And they knew it, and they didn't speak out. They let the Democrats and the Russian narrative derail the first 2 years of Trump's presidency. And they made it impossible for Trump to do things. People want to say, oh, Trump didn't build the wall. Well, yeah, no, he needs the House and Senate to pass things to let him build the wall. He can't just say, I'm going to go build it. But this is where it gets nefarious, because if you believe President Trump is going to win and you believe that we're going to get a bunch of America First Republicans elected to the House and the Senate, that existing infrastructure that wants to obstruct President Trump doesn't want people like Kari Lake sitting in their sessions, and because they know Kari Lake, when they're sitting there going like, hey, what are we going to do here? Like, why don't we just, she's going to be calling them out and holding them accountable. So I think they're anticipating, even if Trump wins, we can still derail the America First agenda for the first 2 years. And then everybody gets drummed up. And at the midterms, if we lose the House and Senate, then it's not a problem. That would be my thought.
I'm totally in line with that. And Jason, don't forget, in the 2022 midterms, we thought it was astounding. It was inexplicable that Mitch McConnell pulled funding for all of these MAGA Senate candidates in Nevada, Arizona, Alaska. The Republicans could have taken control of the Senate in 2022, but they took funding and ads away and dumped it in states where it didn't even matter, or just withheld it altogether. You don't think the same people talking to Jeff DeWitt were talking to Mitch McConnell and saying, we can't let this happen. Blake Masters, you're toast. You're not going to win Arizona seat. Kelly Shabik in Alaska, you're done. We're going to let Murkowski sail to victory again up there. This is the exact same play. We've talked about on the podcast before how the 2022 midterms were sabotaged by establishment Republicans. Here's your answer right here, the same exact stuff. And the other thing that was interesting, he talked about Kari Lake. Do you want to play on our team? Forget the label of Republicans for a second. DeWitt is not talking about Republicans. Kari Lake names it. She says, if you're asking me to be part of a globalist agenda, I'm not going to do it. This is not a Republican-Democrat issue. This is globalist swamp establishment versus everybody else. So we got to get out of that mindset. Yeah, Democrats are terrible right now. They are leading the way. But to your point, Jason, a lot of Republicans sabotage the Trump administration and will continue to do so, because at the end of the day, they are all on the same team. It's us versus them.
Right. And, we had somebody in the chat earlier talking about Nikki Haley. I mean, just fun fact, the guy funding Jean E. Carroll's lawsuit against President Trump was one of Nikki Haley. It's a billionaire who was one of Nikki Haley's biggest campaign donors. And Nikki Haley, he came out saying he's not going to support her anymore. Who knows where that'll go? But the swamp, we call it the uniparty. Democrats and your country club corporate Republicans are one and the same. They put out different policies to destroy America, but neither one of them are looking out for everyday Americans like you, me, and our audience, Todd.
No, I never see any benefit, Democrat, Republican in office. At the end of the day, I pay more taxes. I see more crime going on. I see more immigration at the border. Nothing ever material changes for me. I see a lot of other people getting benefits. If you're wealthy on Wall Street, you seem to be doing okay. You made a ton of money during the lockdowns. If you're an illegal immigrant, you get more benefits than most Americans for free. Again, taxpayer expense. Nothing is free. It's all the same game, folks. But we have more audio. Let's get to clip number 4.
Clip number 4.
The ask I got today from back east was, is there any companies out there or something that could just put her on the payroll and give her to keep her out? And I said, well, what are you willing to do? Like, whatever we need to do.
This is about defeating Trump. And I think that's a bad thing for our country. DeSantis is not America First. This is about the final death blow to Trump.
All right, you know why I put that clip in there, Jason. We had to just bring up DeSantis.
Well, we had to bring up DeSantis, but because DeSantis was backed by the big money people back east. Let's just be honest, folks. I think Ron DeSantis is actually a tragic story where he started out as an America First guy, and they got to him. Because in his run up to we did a whole episode on the collapse of Ron DeSantis, how you could just tell when he got bought out. And like I say, I don't think he was necessarily a bad guy from the start, but he got in the political machine.
He said yes to the Jeff DeWitt in Florida, whereas Kari Lake said no.
Right. Well said. Ron DeSantis said yes to Jeff DeWitt. Todd, that you need to clip that. That was brilliant.
Clip it.
Clip it. The other thing that I'm going to tell you, though, about this is notice how he talks about, do we just need to get you a job making a bunch of money? And this is where some of our friends on the Democrat side, because we always tell people, share our podcast, help get the word out, and share it especially with people that might not follow you politically. So like my dad voted for Joe Biden, as embarrassing as that is, and he watches MSNBC. He has no idea what's going on in Texas. He has no idea about this corruption. But you start seeing connect the dots. So you see there is a clear connection between our elite political class and big business, because they're saying, we'll just get you a job that you don't even need to work just to pay you to keep you on the shelf for 2 years. Now, if you think of that, Joe Biden, when he left the White House, he went to work at the Biden Penn Center at the University of Pennsylvania, where he got $1 million a year and he didn't even teach a class. Hunter Biden does these paintings of pictures. I tell you what, though, the one that this really rang true with me when I heard it is Bernie Sanders. 2016, the Democrat establishment and Hillary Clinton stole the nomination from Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders was really the Trump on the left, although he had horrible, awful policies. But he could have been Trump. He could have pushed and got that nomination from Hillary. But I always suspected, because miraculously, right after that, he writes a book and he becomes a multimillionaire from his book. And it's funny because I talk to my friends that are Democrats, and I'd be like, you don't think he got bought out? No. He wrote a book and it was so compelling. He made millions and millions of dollars from it. I'm like, are you really that naive that you don't think some leftist publisher said, yeah, I'll take one for the team. I'll publish the Bernie book. Here's $2 million. Go away, Bernie. So, Todd, what are your thoughts on that?
You know, we're doing this in real time. It never works out too well. I was just curious how many book sales he actually made. I can't find that, but he did get, folks, just $2.5 million from book advances and royalties in that time frame and a little longer. So again, advances. He's not going to sell any books. No one's going to read what Bernie Sanders has to say. If I had to guess, he sold 1,000 books to communist loons, who then, I guess they share the book because they don't like capitalism. So they buy one book and pass it around for free. But I thought the exact same thing. This is someone that took the cash and settled because they're in it for them. At the end of the day, politicians are in it for them. They're not in it for you. That's why we like Trump. That's why I really like Lake. I liked Lake from the beginning because she seemed genuine. She certainly comes across as much more genuine now. And she says it, I'm not in it for money. I got money. I don't need the job. I had that already too. I'm in it to save this country. Very, very rare. But that's why we support them, because we can see through the BS.
Right. And I mean, just diving into that Bernie thing, $2.5 million for a guy that's never wrote a book to go write a book. And you don't think there was any connection between the Democrat establishment saying, okay, we got to do something to shut this guy up or he's going to blow this whole thing up. And I mean, here you see an example where this dude is offering Kari Lake a position of high position, high authority. And then you start connecting some of these dots too. How many politicians leave Washington and then miraculously they land a big speaking tour, or they're on Fox
Clinton
News.
Initiative.
What's that?
Clinton Initiative.
Clinton Initiative. Even if you think of guys like Adam Kinzinger, who all of a sudden are on CNN, or all these folks, these politicians, they are lining it up when they exit so that they know what's going on, if that makes sense. Like, hey, go into Congress, get the work done for me. When you're done, like, we'll take care of you. We'll give you some job that you're unqualified for. Rah, rah, rah.
Do you wonder, folks, we thought Nikki Haley's an easy target because it's so obvious. Someone who was broke going into the South Carolina House, goes to the governor's mansion, not particularly wealthy still, goes to the UN. Okay, you're living off a nice salary, but that's about it. Leaves the UN and goes to Boeing and comes back as a presidential candidate worth millions of dollars with a multi-million-dollar home. And now she's advocating for neocon, rhino, warmongering policies. You don't think that's an accident?
Yeah, and I mean, literally, Nikki Haley, when she was the ambassador, financial records have come out. And when she was the UN ambassador, she was on the verge of bankruptcy. She had never made any money in her life to speak of. And, you know, that was probably the point where Nikki Haley wasn't corrupt. But she leaves and she gets an $8 million a year job on Boeing's board. Boeing, by the way, is a huge military contractor. And now she's a multimillionaire. And now she's running for president against American first policies. And I tell you what, I don't know if anybody's ever done the shot game where like somebody says something, you take a shot of liquor. Next time you hear Nikki Lake talk, every time she talks about blowing up some country, take a shot. You will be in a coma by the time you're done listening to her talk.
And Jason, I'm saying this for all of if you vote for Nikki Haley, I'm just going to say you're not a real conservative. Be mad. That's just how it is. I know you're probably mad about Hunter Biden sitting on the board of Burisma because you think to yourself, what experience does Hunter Biden have with oil and gas in Ukraine? He doesn't speak the language. He doesn't know the industry. You're right, because documents have come out that said they hired him for his name and his name only and his connections. So why are you supporting Nikki Haley? It is not different at all. Does Nikki Haley have experience in the aerospace industry? No, she doesn't. She knows as much about aerospace as Hunter Biden does about oil and gas. If you are voting for Nikki Haley, you support the exact same thing as what the Biden administration, the Biden family rather, has been doing too. There is no difference. All right, that's my Nikki Haley rant for the day, Jason.
Oh my God, yeah, Nikki Haley just needs to go away. And I gotta say too, all these neocon establishment Republicans who are on the take from the military-industrial complex, they need to go away. We need to take our party back from these warmongers. And I got to say, the other day I went back and listened to Dwight Eisenhower's last speech before he left office, where he warned about the military-industrial complex. Couldn't have been more right. And Dale, you hit the nail on the head. I got one thing to say, and it's both Kari Lake and President Trump was right all along. That's exactly the point. And every time Trump comes out and says something, remember when he said, oh, the virus came out of China. Oh, you're a racist. Oh, we need to watch out for that. Oh, you know, anytime when Kari Lake says this happens at CPAC, oh, the conspiracy theorist has this hard to believe story. Well, now the audio's out and the media is scrubbing their criticism of her from the internet. Ridiculous.
Absolutely. And speaking of audio, we have one more clip, Jason.
Oh, I love this one.
I don't want to make a deal with these kind of people. This is a hill worth dying on.
I'm not willing to accept that. And I'm going to be the biggest pain in these people's. Go back and tell them that. I'm running, and I'm going to be the biggest pain in their
I'm willing to tell them that.
and they're going to have to kill me to stop me.
All right. And I know what you wanted to hear, Jason, if you want to elaborate on that point a little bit more. I think it got cut off.
Well, I was gonna say some of this, because we're streaming on some platforms like YouTube and Facebook, we have to be careful with the audio that we're playing. I will describe what's in the audio once again. TheAmericanTribune.com. We posted the article, I believe, on Thursday with the full audio clip. Kari Lake expressly says, "You're gonna have to kill me to stop me." They actually, over the course of the conversation, there's 3 or 4 references to just that. Even Mr. DeWitt, if that's him on the audio, makes reference to, I got to be careful when I'm starting my car and things like that. So there was you could tell that there was a conversation between the two of them where discussing being Clinton was definitely a possibility.
Yeah, and like I said, the tone of the previous one of the clips that we played was sinister. Like, I know who these people are. Like, they're going to release this tape. Like, they're not going to tell us who they are exactly. But again, some of our worst fears are pretty much getting confirmed. There are some really powerful people with zero scruples, zero morals, and DeWitt and Lake are both kind of tiptoeing around the subject of like, I'm going to say no, but I'm a little worried about saying no right now. And then you can see DeWitt I think he's done. He's just going to disappear and go away because he probably doesn't want to get tracked down anymore either.
Right. Well, and here's what's remarkable too, folks, is, you hear this clip, and once again, go listen to the full 10 minutes. There's some stuff we can't play on some of these platforms, but we can host it on our website. But so what did we learn? Powerful people in the GOP, they don't want America First candidates. They're willing to work with big business to get people high-paying jobs on these businesses. Think about it for these business. Here's this person completely unqualified for what you do that I want you to pay multiple millions of dollars to so that they don't run for the Senate. I mean, what kind of business does that unless they're getting a kickback from the politician? You know what I mean? And we talked about Hunter Biden and Burisma and all that. Yeah, no, these people, these corporations aren't doing this out of the goodness of their heart. They're doing this
because you're qualified.
Right. Yeah, they're not qualified for these jobs or whatnot. And a lot of the discussion is around Kari Lake and what a patriot for her down, which shout out to Kari Lake. Like, we love Kari Lake. Someday we'll have to get her on the podcast. But we
Open
love
invitation.
her.
Kari Lake, you are hereby invited. Drop in anytime.
Oh my God. Yeah. Hook it up, Kari. We've had her on the Wayne Dupree podcast. I do that during the week. So Wayne's got a little bigger audience than we do. So, but anyways, these conversations too, I mean, they're ignoring the elephants in the room. So there's clearly a connection between big business and big politics. Who are these powerful people out east? If we had a legitimate media, they would want to find out who are these powerful people out east. You also see, if you think that Kari Lake is the only politician that has been approached with this kind of bribe, and I'm not saying sit out politics, but like, hey, when you get to the House, when you get to the Senate, these guys want to hire you to speak at their annual convention, and they're going to pay you $500,000, but support this legislation. I mean, folks, this is political corruption, just ripped bare and exposed for everybody.
Yeah, and I saw some comments too that if you recall Madison Cawthorn, Jason, the one and done congressional representative from North Carolina, I believe, but he alluded to, some gatherings in Washington, D.C. and powerful people and the same thing. And he was also laughed at as, just kind of a blah, 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 blah. And then you have the tapes, if you remember the tapes more recently, of some extracurriculars happening in the Senate hearing room by some Democrat aides. I read somewhere that tape was several months old. Facebook, I can't confirm this, but using, again, that sort of thing as leverage. And so that's always about leverage over folks, if it's money or sex or what have you. But just assume they're all bought, corrupted, leveraged, what have you. There's always an angle to get into your politicians.
Yeah, and that's what's sad for America is we have so our founding fathers envisioned a government that really was a group of 50 states. I mean, at the time it wasn't 50, but a group of states that each had their own kind of social norms and morals and had their own rules, regulations. And we entered into this nationwide pact. And we would send, every state would send people to Washington to represent for a short period of time. They would return back to their states to normal life. They didn't want Washington to be somebody's whole career or what they want. If you read the Federalist Papers, they actually warned us about that. Big government comes big corruption. They had overthrown a monarchy or left the monarchy because they didn't want that kind of crap. But when you establish this unholy alliance between big business and big politics, and then you establish this, they select the candidates for you. You're essentially in a monarchy. They just give you the perception of voting. And when I
Corporatism,
say that,
yeah.
I'm not saying there's election fraud. I'm just saying, those powerful people out east are going to support Kari Lake's primary opponent. They are going to dump a shit ton of money to make sure she never sees the House or the Senate floor. They won't support her to get elected like Mitch McConnell didn't. And Kari Lake's a fairly rich and fairly famous person. So if somebody like Todd and I wanted to run for a House seat in Minnesota, because we're America first, they would not support us. They would support our primary opposition. And then if we were lucky enough to get through that gauntlet, you would not be getting financial support from the establishment GOP, because why on earth would they support an America First candidate? So that's why, to answer that question, what can you do? Get involved in your primaries, support America First candidates, and whatever you do, donate directly to those candidates. Do not donate to the RNC. The RNC is corrupt. The RNC is the establishment. You want to give money to President Trump? Go on President Trump's website, donate directly to him. You want to give money to, I mentioned earlier, Brandon Gill down in Texas. Give the money directly to Brandon Gill. Don't let the RNC be the middleman, because they will not spend your money how you'd like.
No, no, they will not. They might pay for a little vacation too if you're Ronna McDaniels. But Jason, I'm not surprised. I'm disappointed, but Kari Lake is, half of the people in Arizona already have a bad taste in their mouth because they watch news. They only consume certain media. They believe the lies that they're told. So they'll write off Kari Lake instantly as an election denying conspiracy theorist. And then you have enough Republicans over there too that says, I don't want to be attached to that. That's kind of messy. I just want my sanitized, does nothing Republican, but says nice things and is inoffensive and lets Democrats do whatever they want. But folks, if we're going to break out of the cycle, you've got to be willing to stand up for candidates like Kari Lake, like Donald Trump. Stop believing the lies. Turn off the TV, do a little thinking for yourself, and then just understand how important it is that we have people like her. She turned down money. She didn't have to do that, by the way. She could have been a Nikki Haley. I just wanted to make my millions, whatever. I had a good run. Now I can enjoy, my twilight years and be super wealthy and do whatever I want. That's just not going to cut it for America.
Yeah, and it's funny too, because part of why we do this podcast, we call it Freedom from the Press, and we don't identify as Republicans. We end up voting Republican more than Democrat because that's the party that has conservative values. But we need to get this country to understand it's not about Republicans, Democrat. It's about the political class and how they're trying to ruin this country. They're in bed with the media. Why did the media spin these allegations like Kari Lake? Why are they not investigating who these powerful people are back east? If you're an MSNBC watcher, like I'm going to call my dad later this afternoon, and because he just had some surgery, prayers out to my dad. He's not going to know the Texas thing happened. And keep in mind, he's going to have MSNBC on his TV all day. And he might hear one brief section how Texas is ignoring the Supreme Court. That will be all he heard. He won't understand how big of deal what's going on is. And that's because the media's in on it, folks. That's why we appreciate those who subscribe to our Substack or subscribe to our Facebook pages or support the work we do, because that's part of how they keep things suppressed. Is independent content creators that want to get messages like this out, they make it hard for you to monetize. And Todd and I were fortunate enough, we were able to build a company so that we could give up our 9-to-5 jobs. So Todd can spend all day watching C-SPAN, and we can spend all our time doing this sort of work so that we can share it with our viewers, which we really appreciate the heck out of you guys.
Absolutely. Hey, it was C-SPAN or DEI training. So you tell me what one's worse. Sometimes C-SPAN is it's a sludge, but no, we are out of the matrix. We broke free. It has been amazing, folks. Reiterating too, like, share, subscribe, pass this along to folks that you don't agree with politically. Jason, I don't think we said anything in this last hour that would be construed as offensive or outrageous. We're just trying to get the truth out to people. Right now, it seems that a lot of people need the truth on the other side because the media is framing up their worldview in such a tightly knit package that, you present something outside of that. They got to do a lot of thinking if they're honest people.
Right. And that's what's funny. And Todd had said something to this effect earlier. Kind of my closing thoughts, and I'll turn it over to you, Todd, to close it out. You watch this episode, you listen to this audio, go listen to the full audio clip on our website. It's going to confirm every political conspiracy, corruption theory you ever thought. Here it is. It's right in front of you. And for most of us that thought this before we heard the audio clip, that's because we just look and Occam's razor is kind of a proverb that says the most likely result is the truest. Hunter Biden selling paintings. It came out, it turned out they're all major Biden donors. So you think those people are donating to Joe Biden and they aren't expecting something on the back end. And it was funny because when that information came out, I wasn't shocked. We knew it was Biden donors. It was people trying to bribe him because that's the most obvious thing. Does Hunter Biden suddenly discover painting skills that are worth millions of dollars at however old Hunter Biden is? Or is it more likely that it's just a money grub to bribe the Biden family? Like, the most obvious answer is usually what's true. So, Todd, I'll send it over to you to close us out. Folks, thanks for tuning in this week, though.
This was great. Another hour flying by, Jason. These are great weekly episodes we have, folks. We really appreciate you joining us today. Man, the comment section was blowing up today. Thanks for following along, sharing your thoughts. If there's an episode you want us to cover or do a deep dive on, we always reference ethanol subsidies. We are willing to do anything and everything to get you accurate information, truthful information. So if there's something you're wondering about, you want someone to explore it a little bit more, we're happy to take your feedback. So drop it in the comments. Let us know what kind of show you want to see. Otherwise, we're back here next Friday at 11 a.m. Central, 12 p.m. Eastern.
Hey, guys, stay safe and God bless Texas.
Have a great weekend.